Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, you've really outdone yourself this time. I mean, this material is all over the place. Ancient history, economics, even a deep dive into San Francisco. I'm not even sure where to start.
Well, the mission, as always, is to find those golden nuggets. Those insights that help us see the world a little differently.
I like that. Golden nuggets. So are we talking literal gold from those gold rush days in San Francisco?
Not quite, but that's definitely part of the story. We're actually starting with excerpts from uh, the Gloom, Boom and Doom report,
Yeah.
December 2023 issue. It's got this really eclectic mix, like historical parallels, investment ideas, and even this guest essay about San Francisco.
Okay, so a little bit of something for everyone. For our learners out there, those who love to connect the dots and see the bigger picture, this is definitely for you. Where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
The report starts with a whole bunch of quotes about history. And I mean, it's a real mix of voices. You've got Samuel Butler, Arnold Toynbee, Alexis de Tocqueville, some names you might not expect, like Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Lin-Manuel Miranda from Hamilton. What's he doing in a financial report?
Right. It's surprising. And then you've got Joseph Stalin thrown in there, too. It really gets you thinking about how differently people view the past.
Okay, so a lot of food for thought. But the report doesn't just stay in the abstract realm of quotes. It dives right into a specific historical event, the Third Mithridatic War. Now, full disclosure, my knowledge of ancient Roman history is a bit rusty.
Well, get ready to polish it up because this war is like a prime example of how messy and intriguing history can be. It lasted for over a decade. First century BC, Mithridates VI of Pontus, this ambitious king, wanted to control huge chunks of Asia Minor, and he went head-to-head with the rising power of Rome.
It sounds intense. And some seriously famous Romans were involved, right?
Oh yeah, Pompey the Great, Sulla, even a young Julius Caesar was in the mix.
Wow, talk about a who's who of Roman history. So, what were some of the standout moments of this war? Anything particularly interesting?
Well, how about this? There was this event called the Vespers of 88 BC. It was this horrific massacre of, like, thousands of Romans. Talk about a brutal way to kick off a war. And Mithridates himself, he was so paranoid about being poisoned that he took small doses of poison his entire life.
You're kidding, like to build up a tolerance.
Exactly. And get this, when he finally decided to end his own life, he tried to poison himself, but it didn't work because of all that immunity. He had to have his bodyguard kill him.
That's a wild story, and I guess it shows just how dangerous and cutthroat the political world was back then. But even in the midst of all this brutality, there were some moments of, I don't know, surprising respect.
You're thinking about Pompey giving Mithridates a proper burial,
Yeah.
even though they were enemies.
Yeah. It's just a reminder that history is never simple. It's full of these complexities and contradictions. Speaking of which, what was the ultimate impact of all these Mithridatic Wars?
Well, they pretty much wiped out the Pontic Kingdom and the Seleucid Empire. That's a big deal. They reshaped the entire power structure of the Eastern Mediterranean. Armenia, for example, became this powerful client state of Rome. They called it Sea to Sea Armenia. You can just imagine the influence they had.
And the legacy of these wars is still felt today, right? I mean, Mithridates' story pops up in plays, operas, even poetry.
It's fascinating how certain figures and events from history capture our imagination and continue to resonate across centuries. There's Jean Racine's play Mithridate, and then operas based on it by Alessandro Scarlatti and even Mozart. Even A.E. Housman's poetry mentions Mithridates and his antidote.
The report makes this great point about how we understand history. It's all about interpretation, right? Depending on where you get your information, who's telling the story, their biases, it all shapes the narrative.
Exactly. The report's author emphasizes that every historical account is filtered through a lens. For the Romans, Mithridates was the enemy. But for his own people, he might have been seen as a hero resisting Roman expansion. We always have to consider the perspective of the storyteller.
So who do we believe? How do we even begin to sift through all these different versions of the past?
That's the beauty of history. It's not about finding one definitive answer. It's about analyzing the different perspectives, the evidence, and forming our own informed conclusions. And that skill, being able to critically evaluate information, is incredibly valuable, not just for understanding the past, but for navigating the present as well.
Which brings us to this really fascinating sidetrack in the report. It's about the kingdom of Commagene and King Antiochus of Theos. This came out of nowhere for me.
Right. This little detour was sparked by an AI suggestion related to Mount Nemrut. It's amazing how these unexpected connections can lead you down these rabbit holes in history.
So tell me about Antiochus. Who was he, and what's so special about Mount Nemrut?
While Antiochus ruled this small but strategically important kingdom, he was interesting because he combined Iranian and Greek traditions. Think about it. His ancestors were the Orontids and the Seleucids, two powerful dynasties. And Mount Nimrit, it was this incredible sanctuary that Antiochus built with massive statues of himself and various gods.
I've seen pictures. It's like this artificial mountaintop with these giant stone heads. It's like something out of Game of
It's
Thrones.
a UNESCO World Heritage Site now. But when they rediscovered it in 1881, thanks to Carl Sester, these statues were all toppled and fragmented. It's a reminder that time and the elements can be pretty harsh, even on the grandest monuments.
You mentioned AI earlier. What's the connection to Mount Nemrit?
It's a bit of a tangent, but the author was using AI to research the Mithridatic Wars, and somehow it suggested looking into Mount Nemret. And the author was struck by the nickname they give it, the Easter Island of the West.
Easter Island of the West. That makes sense. With those giant heads.
Exactly. It's that idea of these monumental statues damaged and scattered over time. But the real point the author's making is that even in modern research, we have to be cautious about bias and misinformation. It's easy to jump to conclusions, to oversimplify things.
So always be critical of the information you come across, whether it's about ancient history or current events. That's a good lesson. And speaking of lessons, the report quotes Sir Anthony Beevor, the historian, on why studying history is so important.
Beevor argues that history is not just about memorizing dates and facts. It's about training your mind. It teaches you how to research, how to think critically, how to build a strong argument.
Those are valuable skills no matter what field you're in. And that's a perfect segue to the next section of the report, the investment observations. After all that history, we're jumping into the world of finance. It starts by highlighting a seasonal pattern in the U.S. stock market, specifically in the fourth quarter of the third year of a U.S. presidency.
Right. The report shows that historically, the market tends to perform well during this period. It's not a foolproof rule, of course, but it's something that some investors pay attention to.
So history can give us some clues about the future of the market, even if it's not a crystal ball. What else does the report say about the current state of the market?
Well, the author actually argues against the idea of a stock market crash. They were writing this back in late October, and they felt that sentiment was so negative and conditions were so oversold that a crash was unlikely.
It's like that saying, when everyone's bearish, it's time to be bullish.
Exactly, contrarian thinking at its finest. And the report also points out that by some measures, the global economy was already in an inflation-adjusted recession. Even back then.
Meaning that when you factor in the rising cost of everything, people were actually worse off. And the report brings up the 1970s, a time of high inflation. Are they suggesting we're heading for a repeat of that?
It's not a direct comparison, but the author is drawing parallels. There are some similarities in the economic conditions.
Yeah.
But there's also a differing view presented from Tavi Costa, who thinks inflation might actually accelerate.
So we've got these contrasting views about where inflation is headed. On the one hand, we have the author arguing that a slowdown in demand or recession will bring down prices. On the other hand, Costa is suggesting that other forces could keep inflation high.
It's a great example of how economic forecasting is never a sure thing. There are always multiple factors at play, and predicting the future is, well, incredibly challenging.
So how does all of this impact the investment strategy outlined in the report? What are they recommending?
Well, the report predicts that bond prices will rally. They think interest rates are going to decline, and that will make bonds more attractive. And they're particularly bullish on emerging market debt.
Emerging markets. Those are always considered riskier, right? Why the focus on those?
They can be riskier, yes, but they can also offer higher potential returns. And the thinking here is that lower global interest rates would benefit emerging economies more than developed ones. It makes your debt cheaper, and it can boost economic growth.
Interesting. And the report draws a connection between the performance of emerging markets and the Russell 2000 index. That's the index that tracks smaller U.S. companies. They note that the Russell 2000 was significantly oversold.
Right. Oversold basically means that the price has dropped a lot, perhaps too much. It suggests that there might be a rebound on the horizon. And the fact that it's correlated with emerging markets means they could both move in the same direction.
But even if interest rates come down, the report acknowledges that smaller U.S. companies face some headwinds. They tend to have more debt.
Absolutely. And a lot of that debt is coming due soon. So even if rates fall, if the economy weakens significantly, these companies could still be in trouble. It's a balancing act.
And then the report gets really specific. It points to the early 1970s as a potential model. Back then, interest rates fell during a period of slowing inflation, and that led to big gains for riskier assets, like the Russell 2000 and emerging markets.
Like history is offering a possible roadmap. Of course, the past is never a perfect predictor of the future, but it can offer some valuable insights.
And looking further out, the report predicts a long-term upcycle in inflation and interest rates. But in the near term, they expect the Fed to cut rates pretty aggressively in 2024. They even think we might see more quantitative easing.
That's a bold prediction. The idea is that the Fed will be forced to act to support the economy, even if it means risking higher inflation down the road.
And then there are these warning signs. The report mentions this disconcerting breakdown in economically sensitive stocks like Walmart, Cisco. And this company called Trade Desk had a weak revenue forecast, which could spell trouble for the advertising market.
Those are definitely red flags. When companies that rely on consumer spending start to struggle, it can be a sign of broader economic weakness. And advertising is often one of the first things businesses cut back on when things get tight.
So where does all of this leave us? What's the investment strategy for navigating this complex environment?
Well, for the near term, the report favors interest rate-sensitive sectors. Think bonds, the Russell 2000, emerging markets, utilities, real estate.
So basically anything that would benefit from lower interest rates. And they even get into specific recommendations.
Yeah, they mentioned some specific companies in emerging markets: Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, Pakistan. They also like Hong Kong property stocks, which they say are very cheap right now.
It's pretty specific. I mean, I know this is just a report, but it sounds like they're putting their money where their mouth is.
They are. And they also think the U.S. dollar will weaken, which could benefit precious metals like gold, silver, platinum.
Gold, the classic safe haven. Always good to have a little bit of that in uncertain times.
They even point out that gold mining stocks are looking pretty inexpensive compared to the actual price of gold. That could be an opportunity for investors.
The report also highlights the real estate sector. They say that relative to the overall S&P 500, the real estate sector is lower than it was even during the 2009 financial crisis. That's pretty striking.
Yeah, it suggests that real estate stocks are deeply out of favor right now. If the report's economic outlook is correct, there could be a big rebound in that sector.
It's interesting how the report presents these contrasting views. On the one hand, it talks about how concentrated the U.S. stock market is in just a few giant tech companies. But then it also mentions this prediction from Savita Subramanian at Bank of America, who thinks the S&P 500 could hit new highs in 2024.
Right. It's a reminder that there's always a bull case and a bear case. Some people see concentration as a risk, while others see opportunity.
And the author seems to lean towards that stock picker's paradise idea that Subramanian talks about. They expect money to flow out of those big tech names and into other sectors. It sounds like they're anticipating a big shift in the market.
It's a call for active management, for finding those undervalued companies that others might be overlooking.
And finally, there's this quick look at Fairfax India, a company that invests in Indian businesses. The report highlights their strong track record and their big stake in the Bangalore International Airport.
It's a specific example of the kind of opportunity the author is looking for: a well-managed company with solid assets, trading at a discount to its intrinsic value.
Okay, so we've gone from ancient empires to the intricacies of the stock market. Quite a journey. Now for something completely different. The Guess essay on San Francisco, this walking stick review as they call it, it offers this really personal and, I don't know, almost poetic look at the city.
It's a fascinating shift in tone. After all that data and analysis, we get this grounded, street-level perspective.
It starts by taking us back to the gold rush days. It paints this picture of a city exploding with growth, full of ambition and chaos. Even those little details, like the strict rules on those Wells Fargo stagecoaches, they really bring the era to life.
Those early years were so formative for San Francisco. That blend of risk-taking, entrepreneurial spirit, and a sense of reinvention. It's all there in those stories.
And the essay talks about how resilient the city is. It survived the plague in the early 1900s and then the 1906 earthquake and fire, which pretty much destroyed the entire city. It's hard to fathom that level of devastation.
It's a testament to the human spirit, the way they rebuilt San Francisco, and so quickly. And just a few years later, they hosted the Panama Pacific International Exposition. It's incredible.
Talk about turning tragedy into triumph. And it's amazing that no San Francisco banks failed during the stock market crash of 1929. And then during the Great Depression, they built the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay Bridge. It's like they always responded to adversity with these grand gestures of optimism.
Those were more than just infrastructure projects. They were symbols of hope, A reminder that even in the darkest of times, you can build something magnificent.
And then there's the story of See's Candy, a local business success story. It shows that entrepreneurial spirit was always alive and well in San Francisco.
Absolutely. Mariana, the founder, she built this incredible company that later became part of Berkshire Hathaway. It's a reminder that even in challenging times, there's always opportunity.
San Francisco's role in World War II is another fascinating chapter. Preparing for attack, the tragic internment of Japanese Americans, and the huge shipbuilding effort at Hunters Point. There's even this anecdote about Lieutenant Baum, the ace fighter pilot, who flew under the Golden Gate Bridge and got reprimanded for it.
It's that kind of daring and rebellious spirit that's always been part of San Francisco's identity.
And then the essay touches on the post-war years, the rise of Silicon Valley just south of the city, and the counterculture movement of the 1960s. It feels like San Francisco has always been at the forefront of change.
It's a city that embraces innovation, creativity, and pushing boundaries. But the essay also acknowledges that this constant change has come at a cost.
Right. The essay then turns to a more critical look at the city's recent political history. It points out that the Democratic Party has been in control for the last 60 years, and it raises concerns about the consequences of one-party rule.
It's a common theme in political discourse. The idea that a lack of strong opposition can lead to complacency, even corruption.
And the essay cites some pretty worrying statistics. A bloated city payroll, high salaries for officials, huge budget deficits, vacant office buildings, even major retailers like Nordstrom closing their doors. It paints a pretty bleak picture of the current state of affairs.
The essay isn't pulling any punches. It's a direct critique of the current leadership and their handling of the city's finances.
And then there's the homelessness crisis. The essay points out that San Francisco spends a lot of money trying to address the problem, but it doesn't seem to be getting any better. There's even this satirical suggestion of shipping city officials to Havana, Cuba, to see how things are done there.
It's a provocative statement, for sure, and it reflects a deep frustration with the lack of progress on this issue.
But despite all the negativity, the essay doesn't end on a completely pessimistic note. It evokes figures like Clint Eastwood and Sergeant Bullitt, those iconic representations of a tougher, more law and order San Francisco. It suggests a longing for a return to that kind of sensibility.
There's this hope that the city can rediscover its grit, its ability to overcome challenges.
And the essay talks about the high cost of living and overregulation as major factors driving businesses and residents away. It even compares housing costs in San Francisco to Sacramento, which are dramatically lower.
It's a stark reminder of the economic realities facing the city. And the Hemingway quote about bankruptcy, slowly at first, then all at once, really underscores the urgency the author feels.
The essay ends with a call for San Francisco to become more business-friendly. It draws inspiration from Abraham Lincoln's perseverance and the leadership principles of John Wooden, the legendary basketball coach. It's a plea for a return to those core values of hard work, discipline, and striving for excellence.
It's a hopeful message. The author believes that San Francisco can turn things around, but it's going to require a change in direction, a recommitment to those values that made the city great.
And there's this final anecdote about a conversation with former Mayor Willie Brown about the city's budget deficit. It's a reminder that these challenges are very real and that solutions are going to require some tough choices.
It's a personal touch that brings the essay full circle. It shows that even in the face of these daunting challenges, there are people who are deeply invested in the future of San Francisco.
Well, there you have it. We've gone from the rise and fall of ancient empires to the ups and downs of the stock market, and finally to this very personal reflection on the past, present, and future of San Francisco. It's been quite a deep dive.
What strikes me is how connected all of these seemingly disparate topics are. We've seen examples of ambition and resilience, the impact of leadership, both good and bad, and the constant struggle to understand the forces that shape our world.
And as we wrap up, I think it's worth reflecting on this question. What's the most crucial element for navigating uncertainty? Is it a deep understanding of the past, a sharp focus on the present, or perhaps an unwavering faith in human adaptability? And how might we draw on the lessons from figures like Mithridates, A.P. Giannini, or John Wooden to face the challenges and opportunities ahead? It's something for all of us to ponder.
Indeed. Food for thought, as always. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep diving deep.
And keep those golden nuggets coming.
Absolutely.